Hello, welcome to Using the Biology of Trauma to Strengthen Our Healing, Part 3. This is the third of a three-part video series. This part will concentrate on applying the science that we've learned in the past two parts to strengthen our treatment to make our healing more effective. We're going to look at all different aspects of healing, and we're going to start with milieu. By milieu, I mean any situation in which there's congregate care. This could be a school, a day treatment program, a residential, a hospital, any place where the treatment involves more than clinical appointments, but managing behavior, providing activities, sometimes providing food, sometimes other supports. The basic assumption in creating a milieu is that people act better when they feel better. People are able to be more connected, more creative, more able to learn and grow when they feel better, when they're feeling happy, safe, part of a group, seen, noticed. Think about it for ourselves. We're not at our best when we're frightened or feeling depressed or feeling self-blaming. In our traditional approaches, we seem to act as though what would make people act better is if we punish them, if they felt worse, if we explained to them or lectured to them at great length about what was wrong with their behaviors. But these are not, in fact, the things that help people to act better. So we should design our milieus to provide as much fun, joy, pleasure, connection, and relaxation, safety, belonging as we possibly can. Daniel Hughes is a wonderful author, and I highly recommend his book, Building the Bonds of Attachment. And he coined the phrase, steel box with a velvet lining, because helping children to feel good doesn't mean that there's no structure. In fact, adults creating a firm and predictable structure is essential to people feeling better. And this applies to adults as well as to children, that people need to know what to expect. They need to feel there's some safety around them, and that the caretakers are managing the environment. Within that structure, however, we can be flexible, patient, compassionate. The structure doesn't have to be immovable. It can be individualized. So that's where the concept came up of steel box with a velvet lining. So think about your setting or setting you've been in the past, whether it's a milieu or a foster home, a school, whatever. In what ways did the program implement a structure? In what ways did they implement what we call a velvet lining or kindness and compassion? Would you say that the place you're thinking of erred in one direction or the other, or did they have a good balance of these two? Give it some thought. So, as we've learned in the whole segments about building the brain, clinical work and talking appointments can be important. But day-to-day activities is often where brains are really rebuilt. So we want to make our day-to-day activities as powerful in this process as possible. This is how we're going to improve the lower brain, rebuild it, and create connections between parts of the brain. And we want to mirror the things that people do with babies to help them grow and develop good brains. Also, we want to bring in the culture of healing rituals that different cultures have used forever, especially ones that are relevant to the people that you're treating. So we want our work to be rhythmic. We want to bring in lots of rhythmic activities and have it be rewarding, that is fun, and done in relationship. So let's talk for a moment about that clinical work. The more we understand about the brain, body, and the way trauma affects the body, the more we understand that words cannot be the center of our healing. Words may be important, and especially as the person gets further in healing, words become more important. But if we're at the beginning, if the person was hurt early in life, if the person has suffered a great deal of abuse and neglect, lots of things have to happen before words. So even in clinical work, we can focus on connecting, and we can focus on various ways of providing our services, not just in our office. Let's go for a walk together, not just when scheduled, but when the client needs us, when the client is feeling distress and is thus open to making a new connection. We want to really emphasize validation. I understand how you feel that way. Tell me more. We want to spend a lot of time on exploring the problem and less time on trying to change the person. Want to get to understand how this behavior has helped them in their life, what functions it's serving. We'll never be able to work towards change if we don't understand how that behavior is helping at the moment. We want to acknowledge how difficult it is to change. It's hard for us to change. Why wouldn't it be hard for our clients? It really isn't helpful for us to lecture to our clients on how their life would be better if they would just change. Actually, they already know that, and they've had that lecture at least 1 million times. So if that would have helped, they'd be fine by now. And think about yourself. How many times has it really helped you to change, to have somebody lecture you on what's wrong? How many situations are there, for me, weight loss, where you know perfectly well what you should do, what the right foods to eat are, etc., but it's not it's not lack of knowledge that is stopping you from changing. It's the ways in which the food is helping you in your life, the way it's adaptive, the way it's helping manage stress. So in order to have someone learn new ways of managing stress, what we have to focus on is skill development, developing other ways to manage stress. And that's what our day-to-day milieus can be about, and it's also what our clinical work can be about, both in deliberate teaching of skills, like, say, DBT, skills training. It can also be about modeling use of those skills ourselves. In all the things we do, we want to work with the client as a collaborator, empowering them to control their own treatment, to have a voice. And we want to focus on their voice even when their voice is not graceful, even when their voice includes swears, even when their voice is complaining about us. We want to enhance their ability to speak their truth, because that ability was squashed by their early childhood trauma. In many settings, there's a clinician and there's also a team. And for trauma-informed care to really work, these two have to work seamlessly together. And the team could be a program, or it could be in several agencies in a community, say a family seeing 3 different treatment providers. We don't want to create an expectation of the team that the role of the clinician is to take away an upset kid and bring them back calm. We all want to acknowledge that sometimes therapy itself is dysregulating. We want everyone on the team, whatever their role is, whether they're the assistant teacher, the nurse, whoever, to understand the adaptive nature of symptoms, because that will come out in all arenas. We want everyone's creativity, everyone's thoughts on ways that we can help this child to meet their needs in less destructive ways. We want the family to understand what we're doing. Families have often had many treatment episodes before they come to us, and they've been taught that the way that their kid will improve is through points, levels, punishments. We want to help change that thinking and encourage the family to understand that it's by love, play, relaxation, safety that their child will change. And within our team, we want to appreciate and acknowledge small steps, because that will keep all of our hopes up. It's very helpful to teach people about trauma, both youth, if we're working with youth, and also their families. Many times when we teach the family about trauma with regard to helping them understand their youth, it also helps them to understand their own early trauma and their ongoing reactions to it. I do have a great bibliography about brain books for kids, if anyone's interested in working with kids to understand their own brains. We want to honor ambivalence, that things aren't simple. People have mixed feelings about things, and we want always to be respectful. And we want to use multimedia in our interventions. We don't want to just talk. We want to use, if we are talking, we want to use metaphors. We want to bring in drawing. You don't have to, art therapy is wonderful. If you don't have access to that, you can still use drawing. Draw a picture of how you feel when you're angry. What color is it? Draw a scale of when you feel most like retreating and when you feel most like being connected to others. If a person doesn't want to draw, although many of our clients are awesome drawers, how about collage? Music, bring music into the treatment. Have the client bring songs in that exemplify certain feelings they're having. For the person who is fluent in language, writing can be helpful. Writing in a journal back and forth between the clinician and the client. And then there's families. We have to bring this trauma-informed lens to families too. It's sometimes easier to apply this thinking to the child and then blame the parent. The parent themselves is almost certainly a trauma survivor and may have never gotten any help or maybe never even told anyone what happened to them. We have to be as compassionate with the families as we are with the children. We want to teach families that play and fun together is the best thing they can do. It's the most healing thing, and it's more important than punishments and lectures. We want to help them do activities together that build brains. And that may not be just telling them to do it at home, maybe bringing those activities into our sessions, doing reading, storytelling, drawing, moving people around into sculptures. We want to have events in our programs that are not therapy events, but fun events that families can participate in, like game days and picnics and things like that. We want to encourage the sharing of histories. Our goal is entirely building connection and safety in the family. A Nerf ball that you can throw around and give a compliment to the person you throw it to is one small technique, with the idea that you're working with the families, you can be active, you can be creative, you can model by what happens in the session that connecting and having fun together is more important than going over what's gone wrong that week. Groups too can be powerful opportunities to learn lots of skills about cooperation, about specific skills such as cooking, about how to set a goal and reach it. They could be wonderful avenues for building brains. So you don't have to have groups where people sit around and talk about their problems. They could be cooking, they could be reading a book and talking about it, or watching a movie. One important group that's very powerful healing is to have a group that does service to others, where the members of the group do things like go to a nursing home and talk to people, or collect food, or serve at a soup kitchen. It's so great for people to have the experience of giving to others when they're so used to being just given to just the recipients. It's a wonderful feeling to realize that you have something to give, that you have value. Groups also can be a powerful tool for people feeling less alone and understanding that others are struggling with the same things they are. Remember to have fun. Have fun in the program, have fun with the families, have fun in a larger community, in school. There's so many ways. And remember that we're trying to include rhythmic activities to build brains. So what about Wii, Dance Dance Revolution, or other Wii games? Have ceremonies. Start every meeting with the same ceremony, like tell me something good that happened today. Have ceremonies for every possible occasion of someone moving up a level in some way, moving to a new grade, etc. Do do team building activities that are designed for team building, and some of them are not very complex. There can be that games of just people winking at each other or trying to say things around the circle and keep the circle going. Find out about a lot of the things they do in camps. Camps can be a great model for us because they do a lot of stuff to create group identities and to have the group cohesive and have fun together. So singing together is a great one. Develop a song. Of course, sharing food, there's always that. Celebrating any life events. And remember, when we're doing games and fun, that it may not be easy for the people we work with to participate in these games. They may be so worried about whether they'll be able to do it successfully, whether others will make fun of them. And if you feel like you're inadequate and you're not going to be able to do this game, usually you don't say so. Usually you do something to disrupt so you won't be part of the game. So think about lots of ways someone can participate. If you were to be playing softball, which for me personally would be very frightening and shameful, some have the possibility that someone could be a referee, someone could be someone who tracks a scorekeeper. Have lots of ways to participate. Someone could manage the equipment so that whatever someone's skill is, they can participate. And then as they have more experiences that go well, they'll be able to move a little further and do things that they've never done before. And remember, all these things should be freely given. They're not earned. They're part of being human. And they're part of what will help someone be better able to regulate. They're not something that they only get to do once they're completely regulated. Do not have games and fun be earned. Have them be part of what you get for being alive and being part of this community. So we have talked before about this, about the power of attunement. So let's think about what we can do to create moments of attunement within our programs. And there's many things that are pushing against us to having moments of attunement, mainly how busy we are. A client would want to talk to you, but you're thinking about the 10 pieces of paperwork you have to do, plus you're noticing some other client over there is upset, plus you're worried about something at home. These things all interfere with attunement. So what can we do to make it possible for us to have moments of attunement with individuals in our program? How can we support each other in doing that? How can we take advantage of any quiet moments to do so? This is a great thing to actually discuss as a team. So remember, physical activity, activating the lower part of the brain, and with the caretakers involved so that the person's ideas about other people is also being changed. Yes, we talked about some of this before. There's many types of therapies that we need to learn about that are not just verbal, that can tremendously support our milieus, schools, for example. And a lot of these come out of the occupational therapy world and are in the area of sensory interventions. I won't go into all of those right now, but they're a huge, rich source of ways to enhance our work through sensory possibilities. Early trauma can make someone sensory system disturbed in some way, oversensitive, undersensitive, etc. And using things like weighted blankets, vibrating pens, sitting on balls instead of chairs, having wiggle breaks, having physical activity breaks, etc., can make the hugest difference in both to behavior. This works both preventively. If you have regular physical breaks and ways to move, you can prevent crisis. It also helps to de-escalate a crisis if one is starting. And then we want to learn about and incorporate, whenever possible, other types of body-based treatment that we can use within our treatment. Certainly one that's extremely well known is EMDR. And if you can get someone on your staff trained in eye movement desensitization response, where you're moving something back and forth in front of someone's eyes, it has a whole theory to it. It's very well proven, can be a tremendously important adjunct to what you're doing. Using neurofeedback takes more equipment, but can be done in small ways as well as big. Then incorporating yoga or massage or relaxation or even mindfulness, all these things will help someone whose body has been a source of pain, and will help them get more in touch with the joy that's possible from their body. Each of these things could be a training in itself, and there's much to learn about all of them. All right, so now let's move on to polyvagal theory. We learned about that recently, and we are going to talk about what does it mean, what could we do to implement what we've learned about polyvagal theory. So the first thing is our attitude. It helps people to heal if we understand deeply within us that the symptoms, the things we're concerned about, all the ways the person acts, are worth respecting. They're the ways a person has survived an intolerable situation, and we have to honor their bodies for having been so creative and respect the way they've chosen to manage their life. Noticing the body's response and honoring it as the best thing the body knew how to do at the time or now. It's not a voluntary choice. It's not cowardice. It's heroism, in fact. It's a person finding a way through an intolerable situations. We have the phrase symptoms as adaptations, and this is the biological manifestation of that. We have to understand that, especially if we're using restraint in our program, we have to understand the many associations that can have for a person who's being restrained. Partly, of course, that involuntariness, the being forced to do something that you aren't choosing to do, and also the idea of calm. Calm is not really easy for people who've experienced trauma, whether it be calm and restraint, whether it be meditation, whether it even be just silence or times of low structure. That's the time when all the bad thoughts come rushing into your mind. All the pain comes rushing back. So naturally, the person wants to disrupt the calm by some sort of action, and that action can often seem destructive, but in fact, it is a way, again, of surviving. So remember that we said that we learned that if the autonomic nervous system is being used all the time to defend against danger, it doesn't have any time for its other tasks. We know this when we say things like don't swim after meals. We know that if our body's doing one thing, like digestion, it may not have as much energy for another thing, like staying afloat. So the more we can provide safety and calm in our programs, understanding that calm can be scary, but still, the more we can help people feel connected and related, the more the nervous system can relax a little bit on the danger vigilance and be able to take care of the rest of the tasks of life. So safety is the bedrock of everything we do. Anything we can do to help our clients feel safe when they come to our program. And this starts by us looking around at our program, perhaps having clients look around, having clients rate different things about the program to see what could be some cues of danger that are taking place in our program. What are our cat hairs? One program had clients rate the intake process, fill out a form about it, and through that they learned that the clients didn't like the soft couches they had in the waiting room because it was necessitating them being close to strangers, etc., and sinking in when they were feeling vigilant. So they replaced those soft couches with individual chairs, and people felt much better, much calmer, much more able to relax. So we want to look at our programs for the physical setup. We want to look at our staff and what's our tone of voice, what's the facial expression, what's our body language. We want to look at whether we have predictability. What are the decorations on the wall? Is there room for privacy? What are some of the things that might make a client feel frightened, such as loud noises, yelling, what seems like fighting? Even things like being in the country when you're used to being in the city can be scary, or vice versa. We want to have people have calm faces, generally. Not always, as I said before. At times we need to be activated, but generally we want to have smiling, calm people. So how do we promote neuroception and accurate neuroperception? And I said some of this in the previous module, that it helps if we teach people about the whole idea of neuroception. It helps us if we teach our staff and if we teach our clients. And then to track, what if you spend a day just tracking which parts of the day were you feeling calm and connected, which parts were you feeling activated and like you had to take action to stay safe, and which parts of the day were you feeling like you were retreating, needed to retreat. Or even if you think over your current or a former workplace, think about the things in that workplace that made you feel connected, that made you feel activated and ready to take action to prevent danger, or that made you feel like you were going to retreat and not engage with people at all. Think about that for yourself, for a current or former workplace. That'll give you some practice in understanding the states. And tracking them through the day is other practice. Again, with the idea that all states are necessary, all states are to be respected. We just need to understand ourselves and know what tends to send us into one state or another. Because we all have common things that are signals of danger, and we all have unique individual things that are signs of danger. And the more we come to understand those things, the more we can decide, is this still working for me? Do I still think this is a legitimate sign of danger? Or maybe that was a sign of danger when I was 5, but right now it actually isn't dangerous for me anymore. That kind of thinking can only go on once you've identified what, for you, tends to move you between these states. As we're looking at our environments, we want to think about sound. We sometimes don't really pay any attention to what sounds are there in our environment. Low sounds are associated with danger. They remind us of predators early in our evolution. When we feel safe, our hearing changes so that we can hear human voices. When we feel less safe, our ears change again so we can tune in more to lower sounds and that might be signs of danger. So what sounds are we hearing in our environment, and is there anything we can do about it? We might want to think about things like fire alarms and what that sound does to our nervous system. Some of it, which it's supposed to do, it's supposed to activate us and make us, in this case, flee. But if we look, we listen, are there times of quiet in our programs? So we want to understand that the other person is always reacting to the signs of our body, not the content of our words nearly as much as the way we're saying our words, the tone, and what's happening on our face and in our body. So therefore, we have to be careful about what we actually are conveying with our tone and with our body stance. So if a client starts to get a little agitated and a staff member starts to get frightened and feel like they're in danger, then they may go into a fight or flight mode and their body tenses up and begins to get ready for a fight. Well, the other person's body immediately reacts to that and starts mobilizing their fight response. Now, both of these two people are escalated into their fight response. This could not end well. So what if the staff member instead starts to feel angry and is aware of this, starts to feel frightened, and then get activated, is aware of it, takes a deep breath, calms themselves down a little, and is able to become regulated again, they can then help the client regulate. This whole process of becoming activated by small signs of danger is exaggerated when you've been in a lot of danger. You just think about it for a minute. If you were a soldier in a war, you would suddenly, or not suddenly, but over a little bit of time, you would become super alert to noises, to tiny noises that might indicate that danger was coming towards you. If there were bombs in the ground, you would become extremely aware of the surface around you and whether there was a slightly darker spot over in that direction. All these would be life-saving. It would be very important that you do this. So then you'd come home and you'd be walking down the street, you'd see a darker patch over on the street and you'd become terrified. Well, that response may not be appropriate to that environment at the moment, but it's very totally understandable, and it was what saved your life over there in the war. This is what we want to teach people. We want to understand our own oversensitivities and help them understand theirs. So we deliberately try to send out safety signals, and we're here to help you signals by paying attention to our body language, to our tone, to our facial expressions. Sarcasm is one sign of danger. If someone's being sarcastic or mean sounding, we want to honor our body's wisdom, teach the clients to honor their body's wisdom. Music can be a big help to us here because music can help in sending a safe relaxation message. So remember, as you're working with people, remember that in their life, attachment and connection has not, in fact, been soothing. That attachment and connection has resulted in pain. So we want to try to actively teach attachment as a source of safety. And we also want to teach things like breathing techniques. All of this can be done partly within play, playing together, having fun, laughing, is a situation in which you're relaxed, you're more vulnerable, you're able to let someone else in. All right, so that was about how to embed what we've learned about science to our milieu, to our clinical work, and specifically how to increase the use of polyvagal theory in our work. And there are some handouts to use with the polyvagal part that help you work with that ladder and look at what sort of things help you go up and down. Well, as we're doing all this work, a key factor is the effect of the work on the treater. If we don't pay attention to how all this work is affecting us, we can't remain hopeful and energetic in the work. And if we're feeling worn out, exhausted, overused, cynical, hopeless, that shows in our body. And it's all very well to say, watch your tone. But if you're feeling discouraged, that will be communicated to the people you're working with. This work changes us. It changes us negatively to be empathetically engaged with people who have experienced trauma. We end up having many of the same symptoms that people who have experienced trauma have. This vicarious traumatization, the phrase was initially created by Laurie Perlman and Kay-Sak Whitney. And paying attention to how the work is affecting you is the most important factor in the success or failure of the work. So that makes it an ethical imperative. We want to embed attention to vicarious trauma throughout our programs. We have to talk about it, train about it, help people understand it's there and it's normal. To address it in supervision and staff meetings and in special meetings after upsetting event. We want to have rituals and recognition of good work. We want to have fun together. We want to promote staff growth. All these things help with vicarious traumatization. We want to use art, and this is an example, this picture is an example of a ritual that this obviously stands for the connections between us. Another important thing we can do is to notice successes, to have actual meetings where we talk about what are some of the good things that have happened, what are some of the changes that we've noticed. We spend so much time talking about the problems. Let's talk about what is replenishing our hope, what good things are we seeing happen. So our neuroception of safety, the staff's feeling of safety, as treaters, our feeling of safety, and thus our ability to offer connection to our clients is extremely affected by attention to vicarious trauma. If we can talk about our experiences, have others say, yes, I've had that same experience, have others validate, understand, hear what we have to say. If we start to feel normal and it's not crazy that we're having dreams about the clients, if we have healing ceremonies, this connection and safety with these feelings widens our window of tolerance and increases the things we can deal with without melting down. There's lots of things that cause us stress. Many of them are in our work environments, such as, of course, the trauma stories that we hear, whether or not we have support and supervision, whether our culture allows us to talk about VT, the way our child welfare system or adult welfare system is imperfect and fails our clients repeatedly. Our staffing situation, if we have staff shortages and each individual is doing 2 jobs, that affects our vicarious trauma and budget cuts. If there's any sort of unfairness in our workplace, such as racism, homophobia, if we don't feel we can be our true selves in our workplace, if we're guarding ourselves because we think some part of us is not truly accepted at the workplace, that also makes us much more vulnerable to VT. Of course, things about our own life also affect our vulnerability to VT, such as what's happening in our life. Are we having a lot of stressors? What's our own trauma history? Do we have things that bring us joy and connection outside of work? Do we do things that help us restore ourselves? And do we get some variety in our work? The most common condition we treat is unhappiness. The greatest obstacle to treating unhappiness is our own unhappiness. So we want to look at what we can do about vicarious trauma, but we don't want to just think it's the responsibility of the individual. It's also the responsibility of the agency. And the agency needs to embed attention to VT throughout. We've already talked about things like recognition, celebration, not overworking our employees, offering supervision, fostering good teams, and addressing any bias or unfairness in the organization. Meanwhile, as individuals, we build resilience, we pay attention to whether we're experiencing VT, and if we notice it, we do things to help ourselves restore and re-energize, and we don't lose track of the things that bring us joy. We also pay attention to the ways in which our work transforms us in a positive way and that we can use the pain to grow. So the fact is that that's what human beings do with difficult experiences, is they look for the positive in them. And the pain that we experience, vicarious trauma in our work, also is responsible for helping us to grow and change as people, because we get to see tremendous resilience and courage in our clients. the possibility of change. It also can help us feel grateful for what we have and what in our own lives. It can help us feel hope. So we can look at how has the work transformed us as treaters, as foster parents, as any role we're taking in the work. So this is, I referred to this earlier, that we do have a workbook on how to use polyvagal theory. Another part of sustaining ourselves in the work is using data and celebrating positive changes. So if we're doing trauma-informed care, we look at what do we want to accomplish. For example, we might want to reduce restraints, or we might want to reduce turnover. Track these things. We have a measure called the Arctic that tracks staff attitudes. As you start to see success within your data, share it widely and celebrate the progress you're making. That will help us sustain this effort. So we can use measures, all sorts of different measures, as things we want to track, and then we publicize them. This is the Arctic. This is the measure that we developed at the Traumatic Stress Institute that has to do with measuring staff attitudes. So then we publicize them to the greater world. So this is the same summary that I said before, but the point is that using brain information to learning more about how trauma affects the brain, how it affects a person's growth, and how it relates to their current behaviors, also learning about what helps heal. These things are very essential to making our work more skillful and focused. We can understand more about the body and the science of danger and safety, and use that to make sure that we're providing connection and safety, and that we're teaching skills. The more we can continue to learn about all these ways of intervening, that more than just talking, all these many ways of intervening that take into account the whole body, the more powerful our treatment will be, and the more we'll see growth and change with our clients, and we will also see growth and change within ourselves. So it's worth doing. Thank you.